You need to understand a chemical reaction in terms of what the reactant is and what the product is. The reactants are at the beginning of a reaction. They will react together to form a product. The arrow points to the product. Atoms are not created or destroyed, they're just rearranged. So the bonds between the reactants break and form new bonds to create the product. The number of atoms on both sides of the equation are the same. You see 2 hydrogen here, 2 on the product side, 1 oxygen here on the reactant side, 1 oxygen on the product side. That is a balanced equation, but we do not have to learn how to balance. Activation energy is the energy required to get a reaction to proceed. In the body, you can imagine, well, let's say you eat your breakfast and you have to break down those food products. Now, if we didn't have what we call enzymes, we would have to heat up our body to break down those food products, or shake the body tremendously fast. And both of those things would kill us. So our body has developed enzymes to break down molecules, our food molecules. These are proteins, and these enzymes allow reactions to occur by actually decreasing this activation energy. Remember, the activation energy is the energy needed to get a reaction to go. And here, there's a lot of energy needed to get these reactants to form the stable product. For example, sugars can be broken down in the laboratory by boiling them in an acid solution. It's a lot of energy to break down these sugars, and our bodies cannot sustain that kind of action, boiling with acid. So enzymes lower that activation energy. They allow the reaction to proceed and us to stay alive. Enzymes are catalysts. That means they speed up the chemical reaction. And there's a much smaller activation energy that allows the reactants to form the product. Which of the following is affected by the action of an enzyme? What was the name of that energy that's lowered? That's right, activation energy. Metabolic pathway, that term may make you think, oh my gosh, I'm lost already. But a metabolic pathway is just a series of steps, A to B to C, and so on. It's really a series of simple steps, and you get a product. And in our body, we have a lot of these metabolic pathways. In this case, what you're looking at here is a starting reactant, A, that is somehow going to be changed to form B. A bond might be broken, a bond might be made, and each step, this first step, A to B, requires enzyme number 1. Then we have B. B is not the final product, so B must be changed to form C, and that requires enzyme 2. This whole series of steps is your metabolic pathway. Now, there are different types of chemical reactions, and we usually focus mostly on 2 different types. The first one is decomposition. So you can see here is our reactant, and it's going to break down to form products A and B. An example of this might be sucrose. Sucrose is table sugar. When we eat sucrose, it is going to break down with an enzyme to form glucose and fructose. Decomposition. Now, in the body, we have to do this in a special way. We do it by a process called hydrolysis. In order to get sucrose to break down, we have to supply water. and it's therefore called hydrolysis, water breakdown. So sucrose with the water is going to form, and the enzyme, of course, is going to form glucose and fructose. Another term for a breakdown or decomposition reaction is catabolism. A catabolic reaction is a breaking down reaction. And so in this case, it's referring to the breaking of covalent bonds. They're covalent bonds holding CD together. And catabolism is the breakdown. And what's going to happen if this is our nutrients? Let's say this is still the sucrose. We break it down to glucose and fructose because it provides energy that can be used to perform work. The opposite of decomposition is synthesis, a building reaction. So here we're forming larger molecules. And we could do glucose and fructose form sucrose. We could do 2 amino acids forming a dipeptide, which is just a kind of like a small protein made up of 2 amino acids. So you're building or synthesizing. It may involve combining atoms or molecules, for example, formation of water. Hydrogen and oxygen forms water. Well, in the body, again, it's anatomy and physiology, so we're concerned with this type of reaction in the body. We do this by taking out a water molecule or dehydrating. So you can see this water molecule that's taken out. So let's say we're building, it's synthesis, it's dehydration synthesis because we're in the body, and this is glucose and this is fructose. Well, in order to form sucrose, a water molecule is pulled out. So when we synthesize molecules, we create a water molecule for each bond. Anabolism is the opposite of catabolism. Anabolism is building. Catabolism is breaking down. You have to build something before you break it down. A comes before C. Anabolism requires energy. Catabolism releases energy. Water in the human body is incredibly important because it makes up about 2/3 of our body weight. Water lubricates our joints and our body cavities. Water is between the membranes in our thoracic cavity. Remember those pleural membranes surrounding the lungs? It's a membrane system with 2 membranes, and there's a watery fluid between the membranes to prevent friction every time we breathe. All of the reactions that take place in our body occur in water. Water has a high heat capacity. That means it can absorb a lot of energy without changing temperature. And water is a solvent for many substances. A solvent is what a substance is dissolved in. So if you were making Kool-Aid, the Kool-Aid powder would be the solute, the solvent would be water, and the mixed Kool-Aid would be the solution. These are definitions that you need to know. Water is a solvent for many substances. What was that upside down there? So what is an aqueous solution? Okay, well, here we had talked about Kool-Aid. The solution is Kool-Aid. When the solvent is water, it is an aqueous solution. Which of the following is not due to the fact that water is a polar compound? You have to think about this one. Well, water cannot dissolve oils. water and oil don't mix. You've probably heard of electrolytes. Drink your bottle of Gatorade, look at the bottle and see what electrolytes are in that Gatorade. Well, here you see two electrolytes, the sodium ion and the chloride ion. There's also potassium, magnesium, calcium, and electrolytes are soluble inorganic molecules. Inorganic means they do not contain carbon and hydrogen. And our electrolytes conduct an electrical current in solution. That's why they're called electrolytes. Cations. A cation, remember, is a positive charge. See that word cation? See that T in there? It looks like a positive sign. Cations move toward the negative side of an electrical field. Oops, so here are the cations. They have moved already in this picture toward the negative side. Anions, remember, A negative, N for negative ion. Anions move towards the positive side. And in our body, this type of movement of ions causes an electrical current, and it's essential for muscle contraction and nerve function. Changes in our electrolytes will really bother us. For example, with potassium, if we have low levels of potassium, our muscles will be paralyzed. If we have high levels of potassium, we have a weak, irregular heartbeat. Normally, humans don't have too much problem with potassium. People have problems with salt. You notice people have high blood pressure. They may be salt sensitive. So different electrolytes have different problems. But our electrolytes are regulated by our digestive tract, our skeletal system, and then finally, if we have too much electrolyte, we'll urinate them out with our kidneys. And here are the important electrolytes. You don't need to memorize these. Just realize, be able to list a couple of them. You know these already: sodium, calcium. You know now why it has a charge of +1 or +2. This is phosphate ion. This is the bicarbonate ion. But I don't think at this point you need to know the phosphate and bicarbonate ion. Well, fats and oils are different from some other compounds. We eat fats and oils in our diet, and so they're going through our intestinal cells into our bloodstream, and they can't do that alone. Fats and oils don't mix in water. They will separate out. They will kind of clog out. So we have to have our fats and oils transported by special molecules. Our blood contains proteins that are dissolved in the water, and because these proteins are dissolved in the water, and the proteins remain intact as a protein, but they are surrounded by water molecules. These are called colloid solutions. Water is so important in the body. Water can dissociate. So here's our Mickey Mouse molecule, 2 hydrogens and oxygen. It can dissociate or come apart into different ions, into this hydrogen ion and hydroxide ion. The OH negative is the hydroxide ion. These hydrogen ions are very reactive. They're bad for us. It is the sign of an acid. This hydrogen ion they're reactive, can break chemical bonds, can disrupt cell and tissue function, and we need to regulate it. We have to regulate that hydrogen ion. We have to measure that hydrogen ion. It's called the pH of our body, is the measurement of that hydrogen ion. And the pH scale ranges from 0 to 14, where 0 is very, very acidic, 14 is very, very basic. And when you go from one number to the other, it's not just 0 to 1, it's a 10 times. A tenfold change in concentration. 7 is neutral.